Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Managing for Profitability and Success, Creating and Applying Key Performance Indicators. My name is Eric Mooneyham. I'm an associate consultant here with the Florida Small Business Development Center at UCF. The SBDC at UCF is proud to be a member of the Florida SBDC Network, a statewide partnership program nationally accredited by the Association of America's SBDCs and funded in part by the USSBA, the DLA, the state of Florida, and other private and public partners. Our speaker today is Mr. Tom Daly, the director of the SBDC at Daytona State College. Tom brings over 30 years of senior management and sales experience. He's lived in Florida for a very long time, over 30 years as well, and is well accustomed to the local entrepreneurial scene. Tom's professional agility enables him to deliver serial successes with small business teams and organizations, upwards of over 250 employees and revenues beyond 50 million, as well as local entrepreneurs and small businesses. Tom brings his skill set to Volusia County, operating out of the SBDC at Daytona State College, and helps entrepreneurs there grow and succeed their business. His efforts deliver value by helping them exploit their unique strengths, overcome challenges, nurture creative business solutions, and develop local business talent. Tom's key disciplines include sales and marketing, strategic planning, market analysis, operations mechanics, industry research, and business plan creation, analysis, and advancement. I'd like to inform everyone your mics are muted by default. If you have questions, please use the question box on the right-hand panel of GoToWebinar. We also have 3 handouts available for you. The slideshow from today's presentation is available in PDF format. Tom has a KPI how-to guide that he's going to dive into a little bit later. And then we have an informational flyer on the SBDC at Daytona State College for you to learn more about their organization there. So now I'll hand it off to Tom to begin his presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. I think I owe Eric probably $20 for that intro. There's no way I could have been that great, but in any case, thanks for being here today. Both Kathy Craven here at Daytona State College for the SBDC and Eric are going to help me on the technical side because I don't really think I have that much of a skill set. So let's see. We are paused. There we go. Okay, so just to start us off, I wanted to do a shameless plug for the SBDC. Some of you folks are clients of ours, and welcome, that's awesome. Probably the most popular thing that we get from folks is that the SBDC, who are you? I never knew about you, that sort of thing. So just to let you know, we are Florida statewide, but we're also across the country. Half of our funding comes from the SBA directly, the other half from the state college system. So that's why our offices here in Volusia reside here at Daytona State College. So it's a fantastic resource. We love our job. It's fun to help people. And as we always say, our rates are really great. Your tax dollars actually pay for us. So it's a great role that we play, and we love helping people. Just really quickly, I wanted to walk you through some of the things that we do. We generally work with a lot of small to medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, and what that means is folks that are in earnest, ready to start their business, to do the business plan, the projections, probably time to try to get a bank loan or other investors. We help with all of that. Additionally, we help with building strategies. More and more marketing, particularly digital marketing, is becoming a huge weapon for small business. So we assist in social media marketing, proper construction of websites, and the like. I am a sales guy, so I love sales. I love that process, and so we spend a lot of time with small businesses trying to gather those profitable customers, and we're going to get into that in this webinar today too. But that's a lot of what I enjoy doing. We do help with bank loans, SBA and other. We have expertise on our team. I'm not a banker, but fortunately we have bankers on our SBDC UCF team that help us actually with not only creating those business plans that are palatable to banks, but also because we have those relationships. So a really great weapon in our arsenal. We do a lot of financial analysis. I know a lot of folks are like, I don't want to be an accountant. Part of what we're talking about today is how to take certain metrics that allow you to kind of see how your business is doing at all times so that you can make good, profitable decisions. We also have access to a ton of industry resource. We have very expensive, very robust tools that typically very large companies would subscribe to. But because we have access and subscriptions to those, that means all of our clients have access to that data as well, which is really cool. And then we also have specialized services. We have folks on our team that are experts in import-export, as well as government contracting and other disciplines and the like. So let's get started in earnest. So I love word origins, and so I wanted to look up dashboard. And that's one of the things that's used in KPIs a lot. And one of the things I found out was the word dashboard is actually an old term that referred to when there were horses and buggies. When the horses or the oxen were dashing, it would kick up mud to throw in your face. And so there's actually a board, a wooden board that kept that dirt from flying in your face. So I thought that was interesting and kind of related, because what is a business dashboard? What we're talking about are the measurements that are going to keep you on track, right? And in fact, you want to keep the bad stuff from coming at you. So the bad types of mud that might be flying in your face, so to speak. Here's a picture of a dashboard. That's an automated version, but that's not necessarily a requirement. We're going to get into that in just a little bit too. So we're not going to take a huge intellectual deep dive into KPIs. There are tons of books written on the subject. What I want to align is under or kind of discussing how profitability is everything to a business, and having those key indicators being able to help us make good decisions in real time so that we can maximize profits. So we're going to really cover a couple of different areas. So it's not going to be a deep dive, but I think it's one that kind of makes some sense, and it resonates with a lot of the clients that I speak to. So we're going to cover these areas, kind of what is a KPI, what are the right ones to use, things you should consider, and really what do those things tell me? How should I use that data? So that's kind of where we're going with this. Again, there's lots of great books out there and other deep dive webinars, but I like to keep it at the basic level to say, yeah, great, I'm running my small business. I have to be profitable. I have to be better tomorrow than I am today. How can I do that? And how can I do that effectively and efficiently? And that's really what we're going to talk about. So I actually, and bear with me, this is where it gets a little bit technically crazy. I want to share a cool video from Bernard Marr. He is with Advanced Performance Institute, and this is kind of cool. So we'll see if this actually works for us. So with any luck, this video should start playing. Okay, I think that worked. All right. And the one thing I'm looking for, Eric, is I'm looking for my polls and I can't seem to find them.
That's on the right-hand panel, Tom.
Yep.
I can launch the first one if you'd like.
Yeah, if you would, please. I just wanted to kind of get a feel out there for what folks are doing with KPIs and what you're tracking. So the first one, are you able to launch that? It's out there?
Yes, it's launched right now.
All right, we're just going to take a few seconds. If everybody can just kind of take a minute and click on your reaction to those polls. I want to kind of share it with the group. It'll be interesting for me and hopefully for the rest of us too. And then when after we've kind of closed the poll there, Eric, since I can't see it, if you would just go ahead and publish it, that would be awesome.
Certainly.
All right, the poll is open. I see that.
Okay, I just published it. Can you see that, Tom?
I can't. We can turn around and I see another way. So let's see. Do you regularly monitor your? Let's see. Frequently. Very cool. Okay. So we have the advanced class here. So it looks like most people are measuring these things on a pretty regular basis. So that's awesome. And if you will just kind of humor me one more time, if you wouldn't mind launching the other poll, please, Eric. And this goes to what types of things are you tracking? So this is going to be very interesting. I want to see if this isn't going to be kind of consistent. So after a few seconds, after you guys have had a chance to give your reactions, I'm going to see where we're at. This is going to be kind of fun. So I love the technology. The fact that I can only barely use it, well, that's just the way it is. All right. And looking at Kathy's screen, I'll be able to see it when you publish that, Eric.
All right, I'm going to publish it now.
Okay. All right, revenue profits, sales units, customer sat. Okay, I'm excited to see the customer satisfaction piece because we're going to get into that in just a little bit. So very cool. All right, and back to my screen. Can you guys see it? I'm back. Okay, excellent. And for some reason, it's not. There we go. Okay, so back to the 5 things we said we were going to cover. Kind of going backwards, maybe taking a step back, talking about what key KPIs really are. And what it is I said data that you want when you need it. And really what it is the nuggets of that real-time critical data you have to have. What are those things that you need to know are you okay? How am I doing? How is my business right now? What is the health? How are we progressing against our key objectives? And that's critical because there's a lot. Going back to that metaphor of the dashboard, it's kind of like driving a car. If my objective is right now to get in my car and drive home, I have a dashboard in front of me, right? I need to know that there's enough fuel in the car. I need to know that I'm not going over the speed limit. I need to know that the car is not overheating. Now, it's probably important at some level that I need to know what the inflation of my tires is. That's pretty good, but that's not necessarily critical to my journey from the office to home, right? Those dashboard indicators are the ones that are most important that allow me to get there without running out of gas or getting home without getting a ticket. And that's what I'm talking about. A very simple metaphor, but that's what we're talking about. So that scorecard, how are we doing? It's all about profit. Are we making progress or are we sliding backwards? Are my investments paying off? If it's a marketing investment or if I've invested in a new product, are those investments paying off or is it time to kind of retreat and pivot? Those key indicators are going to tell me whether it's working or not. And then if I have to change direction, I'm also using quantifiable data, right? Because a lot of what we have to do as small businesses, we're running hard. There's so much to do, so much coming at us at a regular basis that we need to focus on the things that are most effective in moving the ball forward. There's too much distraction to not be able to focus on these, so we have to. Is there something going on the other side that you're seeing in the market? Are your indicators starting to tell you something? There might be an opportunity. Are your customers telling you something that you may need to make an investment in a new revenue stream? Or is there a way to reduce cost out there? Look at those indicators to kind of let that be your guidepost. And so one of the things I always say in choosing those KPIs, this is where it gets really kind of crazy. I read a great book the other day that recommended having, I think it was 17 different KPIs. That is simply unmanageable. There's too much to watch. So I say, go back to your key objectives, right? What are the things you must accomplish as a company? Reading some of the books, Measure What Matters, talking about how Intel was able to pivot and eventually conquer Motorola back in the 70s and 80s is pretty fascinating because they focused on the key objectives and worked towards those specifically and had everybody pulling in the same direction. So in general, it's hard currency, right? It has to be measurable. It has to have a specific target or goal. There has to be a good data source for it. It has to be great data. It has to be on a regular basis, monthly, weekly, whatever it is. It's got to be consistent, and someone has to own it. So someone has to publish that data or be watching it or getting it out there on a regular basis. And whoever it is, if it's a sales manager for the sales end, that person has to be responsible. It's part of their set of objectives. You want to pick the metrics that will be your KPIs. I suggest 5 to 7 max. If you do more than that, it's just very difficult to watch. It's too distracting. It's something that you hone down to say, how are we doing? And it could be that over time you say, well, this particular metric is not a good KPI for us. We're choosing to go to a different one that gives us better data so we can make good, profitable decisions. One of the quotes that I've heard is, all KPIs are metrics. It has to be a measurable one, right? But not all metrics are KPIs. Makes sense, but it's something to keep in mind. One of the things we mentioned here is that some metrics, maybe like profitability and gross profit, apply to pretty much all businesses, right? Where some are going to be very industry specific. It might be very different from, say, a pest elimination company to a retail gift store, right? So those are going to be specific. And by the way, one of the places that SBDC can really help you is kind of knowing the average ratios out there for certain line items, maybe expense items or percentage of sales, direct costs, things like that. There are specific ratios out there that are averaged across over regions and nationally. The SBDC has access to that, so we can provide those ratios for you, so you can kind of compare, how am I doing relative to my industry? Sometimes we can even bring it down to a local area like a state or even Volusia County to say, well, how am I doing relative to my peers in this area? It's kind of a great way to compare your KPIs, right? And again, trying to track everything is crazy, but then why are we, I mean, at the deepest level, why are you doing it? Well, first of all, this is the core of management. A lot of times we are doing, right? When I ran my own small business, everything came at me. If the plumbing leaked, I was on it. If a customer got upset, I was face to face with them. So there's a lot happening out there. But the most important time I spent was looking at my reporting for the day, for the week, for the month, and making decisions that would be most profitable for me going forward. That was the important part. The others aren't not important, but the core of management was managing that data. What does it mean, and what do I do with it, right? These are from your strategic plan. So as you look at it, what are those objectives that I can pull from my plan and kind of translate them into my key performance indicators? They all should be quantifiable and objective. If there's a measurement that you have that's sort of like, well, it's good, bad, or indifferent, if it doesn't have a number attached to it, it's not necessarily going to be usable for you from a profit standpoint. And then what I'm referring to, as it makes sense, is working on your business, not in it. I'm going to paraphrase, and I'll probably tear it up, but one of our local hero entrepreneur, super successful businessman, Lowell Lohman, said this, and I'm probably going to mess it up a little bit, but he basically said that every time you're working on something that somebody else could or should do, you're moving backwards and you're missing profit opportunity. And that's true. So if we're kind of stuck in the day-to-day, but we're not managing those larger objectives that we know can make money for us, then we're probably not using the best use of our time, for sure. So I think that's certainly wisdom to lead by. So sorry for paraphrasing that, but I think that was the point. So 3 things overall that I like to look at when I'm doing this whole project of building KPIs. As I said, it's all about profit. Well, it is, because profit allows you to go forward. It allows you to pay the bills. It allows you to hire more people. It allows you to increase your market share. It allows you to be a dominant player. And the more profit you receive, the more you can invest in new angles, new opportunities, and it keeps you an industry leader. But that being the case, the objectives may not always be profits. It may be, we want to hire more employees. We want to grow more entrepreneurs by bringing on apprentices. We may want to try to increase our market share by so far. It may not only be about profit. So good, take a deep dive into your strategic plans to make sure that they correlate with what you're trying to do overall. Your business stage really matters, right? So if you're a young, brand new company, there's so much to do. You are trying to build processes, hire the right people, gather as many new customers to get them happily involved in your solution as possible. You're trying to create great value propositions. So that's going to be a little bit different on how you choose your KPIs. If you're a maturing business, you might be looking very closely at employee retention. Because that cost of having to deal with turnover to hire and train new people is super expensive. It erases profit. So we want to make sure we have the right people, but we keep them. Just like that, we want to make sure that we have the right customers, right? And those customers that are profitable for us, the best customer or the best sale is one that you sell to a current customer, right? Because you don't have as much cost up front to find the client, and they're already happy we hope, with your solution, so they're going to buy more. So as a maturing company, you're probably looking at customer retention, employee retention, and your KPI should reflect that as well. And then leading versus lagging, it's basically, are we looking backwards or looking forwards? And we'll go a little bit deeper into that. So on that first of the three objectives, those most impactful metrics, and this is kind of combined with the whole sales thing. We have a sales benchmark, but we need to get new revenues, new profitable revenues, and we need to get new units or new services, whatever it is you sell. That has to be at a growth rate, because if you kind of imagine the growth line of revenue, yes, we want it to go up, and I'm guilty of saying it too. I'm like, oh, revenue can really, it can paper over a lot of bills. True, but what ends up happening is what we want is our revenue to go in this direction, but we want our cost line, which is going to go up, certainly as we buy more units or inventory or whatever it is we do. There's costs that are going to be there, but over time, what we'd like to see is that our cost line starts to taper off. And that spread, of course, is gross profit. And assuming that we keep our other expenses in line, our SG&A, that should yield net profit. So we want to constantly watch that. And so a lot of the metrics that we're looking at, if all of a sudden our costs start to spike and our gross margin falls, that's a time to pivot and rethink maybe what we're doing. That's why it's so important. Again, what are you doing for customer retention? What are you doing for satisfaction? How are you engaging your customers? Again, in the digital world now, there's a lot more tools out there, but it's a little bit of the Wild West. You kind of have to understand how your customers are engaging digitally and how to connect with them in a way that makes sense to them. We talked about employee turnover and openings. Recently, I did a study on just how much it costs to turnover and train new employees, and it can really erase profits overnight, almost to a negative. So hiring decision is very important, and I know that's super difficult right now, but also training and retention, picking the right people, making sure they stay and make sure they're engaged. Another advertisement about objectives and key performance indicators. It's important that you understand them because you're taking them from your strategic angle, but one of the holy grail is making sure that every member of your team, every single person, from the newest employee to the person that's been with you all along, needs to understand what the objectives are, complete transparency, but more importantly, what their contribution or what they do contributes directly to the performance indicators and the overall health of the business. That is critical. When employees are engaged, understand what their contribution is and understand that it adds value, the likelihood of hitting the overall objectives is increased dramatically. And then marketing analytics and conversions. This is starting to happen a lot more, and there's better digital or automated tools via CRM and analytics that you find on Google and social media to kind of understand what my ROI is. I'm spending money on advertising and marketing. What are those conversion rates? Are they actually turning into customers, or are people just blowing it off and going, not that interesting? Is my value proposition getting communicated to the most likely clients? And we can actually measure that now a lot more effectively than we did in the past. Going back to those KPI, or to the business stage, I should say, again, think about the KPI relevance. And one of the things that we kind of went over before, but it's true, you need to prioritize what your business needs are based on the age and where you are in the continuum, whether you're a startup, stage 2, stage 3, maturing. Your industry itself is probably going to guide which things you're going to be measuring on a regular basis. And again, with those new companies, what's going to be critical is you're managing that cash flow. It's important for any company, but in the beginning, there's probably not a lot of money there, so you have to protect it jealously to make sure that every dollar we're spending is going to move the ball forward, and that eventually, in the beginning, it's really hard to turn a profit. In fact, as you start to go through those first few months, we might see negatives at the bottom, right? But we want to see those negatives at a decreasing level until we basically get to 0 or break even, so we start growing. So as long as the trend is there, that's part of the cash flow and the processes. Again, we talked about established firms and employee and client retention, really, really critical. And then what I always say is this is important, that transparency piece, as you're talking about objectives. Did we hit it? You know, we either hit it or we didn't. And it should be very transparent to all of the team members to say, yes, our target was this, and we blew it out the door, and that's fantastic. We need to do more of that. Why did we blow it out the door? What things seem to resonate with our clients? What seems to be the secret sauce that we want to repeat? Because as a sales guy, I was always kind of lazy. If it worked once, I'm going to try it again. So keep duplicating that, because if it resonates with one client, it may resonate with similar clients. The same thing holds true when you have those meetings. If we missed it, did we miss our objective? Why did we miss it? Was the KPI wrong? Do we need to change that? Did we underperform because of some distraction? All of those things should be discussions in the framework of how did we achieve? How did we do against the KPIs? All right, and this is just really quick. So the indicators are basically two kinds, lagging and leading. And all that really means is that the lagging ones, it's like a P&L, right? It's your income statement. It's in the books. You can't change it. This is what it was. It's what it tells us from behind. And as we look historically over a period of time, we can see what our trends are, and we can make decisions based on those lagging indicators. Leading indicators are forward thinking. They could be accurate, or they might be a little bit of an estimate. And that could be like, say, customer service satisfaction, social media engagement. What's going on out there? Because if we're seeing on a general basis that our clients seem to be happier and happier, our Google ratings are very, very consistent. People are saying things that really resonate with other clients. If we're seeing that, that's probably going to mean future sales. If for whatever reason there seems to be some dissatisfaction out there, there's a problem that's being identified through that leading indicator, it's a good time to be changing your strategy going forward, right? So in general, you say, well, that's a lot out there. How do you get to 5 or 7? Great question, right? So in general, all businesses are tracking these things. What's my profit? What's my gross margin? What's my quick ratio? Is my cash and my AR more than my liabilities? I need to know that. I need to know what it costs to get a customer. I need to know in general how much a client over the life of when I know them is worth. I need to know those numbers for sure. I need to always know my cash position. But these may or may not be your KPIs, but you are going to always be tracking them, or at least somebody in your business should be tracking it and letting you know that we've got an issue here, or I see an issue on the horizon. You don't want to be surprised. You want to see things coming before the train comes at you. So as we kind of throw them out there, some of the ones that seem to really be popular with our client base is kind of talking about conversion rate. How many clients that we reach out to actually become somebody we give a proposal to, or eventually hopefully become a customer. Gross margin, always really important. And again, something you can track given those ratios I talked about, because I have access to them with all of our different research tools. That's a great way to measure how am I doing against my plan, but also how am I doing against my peers. So all of those things are super important. One of the ones that's huge, and we talk about this in Profit Mastery quite a bit, is days outstanding. A lot of times, and I talk to clients all the time where they're like, yeah, I had to take this big customer, but they insist they'll only pay 60 days out. And I say, wow, that's really tough, because your profit is reduced when you agree to that. And I always say, you never get what you're worth, you get what you negotiate. So you got to push back on that. Sometimes, and we can show you this at the SBDC, if let's say on average your days outstanding are kind of like in the 45 category, if we could change our behavior and perhaps a KPI, right? If I could change that customer behavior to pay me in 41 days or 39 days, that is an immediate cash flow drop and an immediate profit drop. So these might be the kind of KPIs you're looking for, particularly if cash flow is an issue, if profitability seems to be just a task that we're having a hard time budging the needle on. So look at that. Lots of them are out there. Website traffic, we can help you with that too. We spend a whole lot of time on SEO and engagement and value proposition and using blogs and content to be able to engage more clients. And I always say the objective is, right, the best business deal is finding the client that will most benefit from what you do and that thing that you do the best, right? Because a couple of things happen there. Number one, it's almost built-in customer satisfaction, but it also means that there's going to be less pressure on margin because the client's going to immediately see value. If it becomes a net price game, unless you have incredibly efficient systems, that's not a winning strategy. So these might be part of your KPIs going forward. Now, I'll warn you, this is definitely an eye chart, and don't worry, these next two slides are in the attachment that we sent you. But this is kind of like if you're thinking about, well, gosh, I need better ideas. I need more things to maybe look at in terms of KPIs that might resonate, particularly as I kind of look at what the ratios are with the other peers in my industry. Here are some ideas. And again, don't even try to read this because actually I don't have my glasses on. I can't read them, but these are really good because again, every KPI is a metric. Not every metric is a KPI. You can search through these and decide which category: sales, financial, marketing, social. On the next page, there's supply chain, human resources, and customer. Those things that you can extrapolate right out of your strategic business plans. Which ones are super important? You might be able to go to these measurements and find a measurement that is trackable on a regular basis that could be super important as a KPI. So I just created this as a little bit of a reference for you. Again, don't try to read it. It's in the document on the handout, so away we go. Talking about tools. What's really cool about living right now is that we do have a lot of digital cool tools that are out there. Right now, CRM systems have become extremely affordable. Some of you may be using them. I hope a lot are. Some of them are very inexpensive and they're awesome. So things like Zoho and HubSpot, they're on subscription basis, on a per seat per month basis, worth their weight in gold if you use them properly. They have umpteen zillion ways to track KPIs and metrics, and it also provides dashboards. So if you decide what KPIs are most important, you can have an executive dashboard that tells you at any given time, this is how we're doing in sales, gross profit, AR days, et cetera, just so you have that in real time. That allows you to make decisions or maybe even ask questions and also say, wow, okay, looks like revenue is looking great, but all of a sudden we're sliding on our accounts receivable. Kathy, what are we doing? What are you hearing out there? Is there any way we can be touching people? So it makes your KPI real time, and it makes what you need to do actionable and frankly obvious. So CRM is great for that. A lot of companies use QuickBooks or a similar accounting system. They all have reporting structures in there where you can spit out reports. They also can drive KPIs, give you KPI information. So the software that's available out there is very robust, very affordable now, and I recommend it to anyone. Google and other analytics are outstanding as you kind of check what you're doing on the web, when your outreach, what your engagement is with your client base, with your visitors, how many of them are finding you in a search and then ending up on your website and converting to a contact form. All of that data is available. If your website's up to snuff, you have analytics built into your website engine, that's all great. Same thing with social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. All of them have built-in analytics, the paid-for versions, of course, but it gives you an idea of how's that engagement working. Just a word, two things. Number one, it sounds like, or to me, I believe in content and being out there in the social world or the digital world, showing that you are the thought leader in your industry brings in new clients. It also helps when you're mentioning and sending bullets out there that talk about the things that likely searches are looking for. Those type of things are picked up by Google and actually raises your SEO. So I won't go deep into SEO, but that's another reason for it. But then all that said, I'm talking about digital tools. To be frank, if you don't have these tools, you still can measure KPIs. KPIs have been measured forever. If you use a grease board and it's your sales tracking by rep for the week, if you use a piece of graph paper where you're checking, okay, how are we getting paid? What's my cash flow? If you use spreadsheets and you're able to maintain that, or hopefully somebody in your organization is doing it, those work fine. I do have a bias towards using digital tools just because they're easy and they're very robust, but you can easily measure your own KPIs in a manual process. So long as you have a process, it works just fine. So don't think that you have to make the investment. I just think you should. So in any case, talking about those best practices, I'm going to circle back. That team buy-in is key. If your team members know exactly what the company is trying to accomplish, what's important to the company, how we treat customers, what our position is on quality, profit is not optional. It is a must. It's how we invest in the future. It's how we make more money as employees and as a business owner. That's what we do. If they buy in and understand that their slice of the pie, what they do, directly contributes to the success of the company, or maybe if they're not pulling their load, we actually aren't able to hit our objectives. If I as an employee understand that, I am fully engaged and I understand it. And that's kind of the holy grail too, is trying to get those team members completely moving in the same direction. When that happens, magic can happen. Schedule that KPI review time. If it's in the morning, you love to look at your reports. Again, if you have a dashboard, that's pretty cool. You can pull it up with a cup of coffee, kind of look at what that is. It's going to frame the questions you need to ask of your key team members. It's going to probably drive what you're doing today. It's also making you kind of look at something. I saw that number before. I saw that trend before. I really think I need to dive into that a little more. We may need to shift direction. So make that time. If you do it daily, pick a time that you're not interrupted. It's not a time when you're also got one eye on email and then you can get distracted. Be focused, be present, absolutely analyze it, and understand what is that data telling me? Ask the questions, involve your team members. The other piece is that if you do it on a weekly basis, make sure that you don't schedule it at a time when it's most busy, when the phone's ringing, when there's tons of email coming in, it's too distracting. Preserve that time, it's sacred. Again, back to that, what the data is saying, ask the questions, be curious, don't assume, and then always get somebody else's perspective. And then I had to just say it because it's just the way it is. It's one of those things where I always say, the other saying is, extraordinary people are just ordinary people that will do what needs to be done, right? And so it's a matter of make the commitment, make it simple at first, but absolutely do it. If you do it and you make the commitment and you make sure that the rest of your team says, oh, that is the commitment we're making as an organization, that's what our owner or top shareholder has decided, this is what our focus is, then everybody's more likely to be on board. So that's my Nike steal. I steal from everybody. Nike, just do it. This is super important. I love this stuff. Again, shameless plug for the SBDC. I know some of you are joining us from outside of Volusia, and welcome. As I mentioned, we are everywhere. So if you don't know who to contact, certainly reach out to us. I'll have my contact information at the very end. We can direct you to the proper SBDC. All of you Volusia people, as you can tell, I absolutely love what I do, and our whole goal here is between Daytona State College and the SBDC here in Volusia, we believe that we're charged in helping the small business community just rise, because the economic fundamentals are rocking here, and we have a great opportunity, and we have a lot of super smart people that are starting businesses or running existing small businesses, and it's an exciting time to be here. So we love what we do. Anytime we can be of assistance, again, our rates are super, right? You're never going to see a better deal, but we do enjoy what we have, and if we don't have the answer, we're pretty good at finding it. So that is basically my whole show, and let's see, I kind of kept to my time frame that I had in mind, so I'm pretty excited about that. I'm hoping that maybe there are some questions that we can kind of chat about. Kathy, any questions? Was I that good? Was it really that? I actually kind of surprised you at the end, but if there are any questions, just go ahead and put them in the chat, and Eric will pick them up, or Kathy will. And let's see.
Great, thank you, Tom. Thanks for the dynamic presentation.
Sure.
So we had a couple good questions come in. Firstly, what would you suggest as a potentially good metric for a business dealing with vendor management?
Vendor management, boy, that's great. And I'm not really sure if that's from a supply chain side or from an AR side, but those are both trackable. So one of the things backing up, and it may not be exactly a KPI, but one of the things that we found during the pandemic especially was a lot of businesses, because we shut down for a period of time, some businesses were able to open up pretty quickly, others were not. One of the things that they did was really getting selfish about that cash flow, right? And they looked at their vendors, and whether they liked them or not, they took that opportunity to say, hey, things are a little tight right now. It is important that we preserve our business and preserve our employees. We would like to renegotiate the terms of our contract, because honestly, there isn't enough revenue to justify the costs that we're paying, or different terms. We can continue to buy from you, but instead of having to pay in 10 days, we request that we can pay in net 30. So some of that might be on the on the vendor negotiation side. Two things the other two things that occur to me is supply chain. And I know that this is a bear right now, particularly in the building industries and pretty much anything that you're having to buy, depend on raw goods from. I know it's really difficult, but in more normal times, tracking the performance of when your deliveries are coming in. If you're accustomed to receiving your deliveries of goods or finished product within 30 days, and suddenly your vendor is starting to move to 40 days, and again, this is past the pandemic, so I know things are a little bit different, that's probably a time to check with them, because that delay means a delay for you being able to deliver your product, your service to your client, and therefore getting paid. So it might be tracking their supply chain, and there's a umpteen different ways you can do it. So from a payment standpoint and vendor performance standpoint, I know it's different during the pandemic, and supply chain's a little bit jacked right now. But going forward, you want to keep everybody honest. And again, I do believe it. A lot of people say, I can't negotiate that. Well, you have to ask first, right? And sometimes you can get a better deal. Sometimes you might find your supplier is really hungry for revenue and they're willing to do something a little bit different. All of that is bottom line, and bottom line is everything. So I don't know if I answered that question exactly, but that's two different angles I'd probably look at. Great,
thanks. Another question here. Someone asked, could you touch again on the difference between a KPI and a metric? Their understanding is they might have a dozen or more metrics, obviously, but they were asking only 5 to 7 of them would really be a true KPI. So when would they look at the KPIs compared to looking at the metrics, and what would the real difference be?
Yeah, so awesome question. That really goes to the whole heart of what we're talking about. Again, if you just kind of take the framework of everything we're trying to do is to make the business more efficient and therefore more profitable. So that's everything. And so what we've decided is there's tons of data out there, right? And that was kind of what the little video was about, is at a certain point, it's just like, wow, there's so much data, I could measure this, and you could go into, analysis paralysis, right? So your question is so core to this that there are a ton of metrics. Use the word measurement in place. It's kind of the same thing. So lots of things we can measure: profits, units sold, AR days, customer satisfaction. Those are metrics. They're all measurables. And in order to be a measurement, it has to have some data for it. You can't say, how is it? Pretty good, not so good, terrible. That's not a metric. That's just a feeling, right? So a metric is a measurement of anything. So that's what it is: metric, measurement. A KPI is selecting that metric or measurement that becomes something that you must measure, because it really gives you excellent optics into how you're doing against your key objectives. So if I am selling calculators, right? I did that once upon a time. Scary, shows my age. But in any case, if I'm selling calculators, and I generally sell, I'm going up by about 2% a month, so 100, 102, and so forth. And all of a sudden, I take a nosedive. I need to understand that, because that's my business. It's units. I have to know that. So for me, that measurement of how many units sold this month is a metric, but it's a KPI for me because I have to know that. So KPI, that's why I say 5 or 7. Those are the ones that are most important to your business. So if you're, again, in the calculator business, you have to measure how many units, right? How many customers have you touched? Have you called on, everybody in this particular territory? Did you make 10 phone calls a day? That's what we measure. Did you not make 10 phone calls a day? Okay, well, we need to make it up by the end of the week, 50. So if that's important to your business, that's the metric that you're measuring to make sure you're doing okay, right? So that's really the difference. And back to that quote, and I actually stole it from my wife, who I think stole it from somebody else. We'd love to just duplicate. But every KPI has a metric, but not every metric is a KPI, if that makes sense. Just the most important things that go on your dashboard that let you know that your business is doing well, kind of like your scoreboard. Great question.
Thank you.
Sure.
Another company asked, what are the most critical KPIs that you would recommend for a small business looking to position themselves for an SBA loan?
Oh, fantastic. And there's more to it there. So number one, is you have to have a plan. So when you're positioning for a loan, I always tell people this, there always seems to be some mystery about getting lending from a bank, right? It's very stressful. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like turning in a term paper and I hope I get an A, right? When in fact, it's just another business that just wants to know, is the business viable? Does it have a plan? And more importantly to them, am I gonna get paid? And so in order to do that, you would first build the plan. What's most important? Your strategic plan. This is what we do. This is what our customers are. This is how we make money. This is how we'll promote ourselves, right? Your basic business plan, nothing too fancy. And then you're gonna also say, okay, and then I'm gonna use my projections to say, how is that revenue gonna build? How am I gonna measure? What am I estimating my direct costs are gonna be, right? So revenue minus direct cost is my gross profit. And then all those other crazy expenses, so mileage and rent and electricity, all those things that are not directly attributable to the product or service. I'm gonna build that out 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. And that should show a trend of growth, right? And so that's how I do it. So then I'm like, I got that. And then back to the original question is, how do I measure, how do I decide on those measurements? So as a small business, and we were saying growing companies in the beginning, you're probably, if you're making a product, you need to make sure you have KPIs associated with how are you able to produce that product? Is it coming out efficiently? If you're set up to produce 10 units a day, you can't miss that number because you'll fall behind, you have less product to sell. If you're selling something, you need to know how many units are going. If you need to know, if you sell an array of products, you might have some that are a little bit lower margin, higher margin, et cetera. You want to focus on those products that are most profitable. You may have to sell some loss leaders because you have a wide vast of SKUs, but you want to make sure you're focusing on the ones that have highest value. So as a small new business, you probably want to focus on KPIs that are revenue driven, certainly profit driven, and then cash flow is always going to be tight. Even when you get that loan and you're up and running, you're not going to have, the cash will not be a luxury, it'll be your lifeblood. So you want to make sure that your expenses are probably a KPI for you. So if it's a percentage, there's only so much you can do. Once you've negotiated your lease for your rent, it is what it is. But you can make decisions on, what am I spending on office supplies? What am I spending on other discretionary expenses? I'm going to be really, really, really cheap and really, really stingy about spending that money as a small business. So I probably want to keep those percentages. So let's say office supplies is maybe 1% of revenue. I want to make sure that I stay at 1% or below. That might be a key performance indicator for us. So be very cash driven in the beginning.
Another great question here that kind of ties into what you were talking about with connecting team members' contributions to the business's health. Someone asked, how can KPIs prove to be effective when measuring organizational impacts? For example, monitoring changes in thought and behavior of employees or company culture. We want to measure the impact of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in our organization.
Okay, that's a lot. Yeah, that's really great. And what is important, I think what I'm hearing is that there is a desire for kind of a report card of how are we doing with our workforce. So a couple of those things make sense. I think here in Volusia County, we spend a whole lot of time talking about that right now. We want to help all small businesses, but we want to make sure that we're paying attention that underserved businesses are having the same access to resources and growth and marketing as everybody else. And so you would hope, and I'm proud to say here at Volusia County, we have it, that our client base reflects our community, and it largely does. So if I'm a small business owner, I want to make sure that, at least in general, that I'm striving toward and my workforce reflects the community in makeup, in diversity, et cetera. So that's kind of important. The other important metric, and this is probably really important, I don't know if all companies do it, and it's really hard, I think, for us entrepreneurs, where it's kind of like, we feel like doing the work, that's how it gets done best, which is not true. It should be the other way around. We should be hiring people that do it better than us. But a lot of times that's kind of our control freak nature, right? But what's really important is to ask the hard questions of our employees, right? Some of that's going to be the 360 evaluation. How am I doing as a leader? What should I be doing differently? And then some of the KPI might be the measurement. It might have to be something that's confidential, but rate your satisfaction of your job task. How much do you think your contribution helps or hurts the mission of the company? It kind of it would be an employee survey, but make it really specific so that you find out what you're seeking. What don't I know? What would I love to know that I don't know? And so that a couple of things happen. Number one, you get the metrics you're looking for, the KPIs. So I do support the employee survey part. You might learn some hard lessons you didn't know. And those could be really, really important for future decisions you make, either with your employees or maybe even with your marketplace, right? So I think those are really important. I don't know if I'm answering that question completely, but that is really super important to making sure, back to what we were talking about, we get that employee engagement. Because if they feel like there's transparency, they feel like leadership, management is being honest with them and showing them what we're doing right and what we really need to work on because we're not doing it so well. And then making sure that it's in an impersonal, you guys are part of the solution. You are the solution. And if I can get some measurements to find out how I'm doing, because if I find out that only half of my folks are engaged, that's on me. I mean, that I have to change how we're doing things because clearly the message is being lost and maybe those KPIs can help. So not sure if I'm answering that specifically. Again, if I can help offline, maybe if I know the specifics, we can have some fun with that. That's a great question.
Great. Thank you, Tom.
Sure.
Here's another question that's great and kind of lines up with your previous professional experience here. Someone asked, what sort of KPIs are best applicable for businesses that are exclusively software based?
Mm-hmm.
There's no discrete units being produced or so how can we see development progress?
No discrete units being produced. So
for
it sounds like
businesses that are exclusively software based.
Okay. So two ways, I may be misunderstanding a little bit, but if I'm producing software, so if I'm producing apps or desktop software, mobile software, something like that, two ends, right? The one side is going to be the production side, particularly if I'm a new business, that part of it's project management, but it's also KPIs in that regard, that I have to be able to produce that product from alpha to beta to test market, et cetera. I have to hit those milestones. If I don't, it slows down my ability to go to market. So that's going to be more project management, but am I hitting those weekly updates, et cetera? Producing it. And by the way, I'm not a software engineer, so I'd probably just completely bastardize that. But the production, or kind of like any other manufacturing, we have to hit those milestones in order to produce the product. On the software selling side, the two things I think are going to be important. So first of all, it has to have an audience. So if the value proposition has been articulated, then we probably need to be out there on social media and on the website, blogging, vlogging, getting our message out there, and then measuring. That'll probably be where the analytics for Google and social media are, measuring what that client engagement is. Are we getting conversions from people clicking on the social media post and then ricocheting back to our website and they're filling out a contact form? Is it like crickets? I'm not getting that sort of engagement. Do I need to kind of change it? Do I need to hone it down? And then the last bit would be hard sales, right? So if I have this much invested, I'm going to have an idea of what I need to get revenue-wise based on my cost structure to be able to make it. So I'm going to have to, just like any other product, software or otherwise, prospect engagement, units sold, total revenue, gross profit. And so those things, regardless of whether it's a tech product or a completely non-tech product, those things are still going to be important. So again, I may have missed a mark a little bit. The production side, if you're actually writing the software that's project management based, you grab your KPIs from there because those objectives are crushingly important. And then if it's really distribution to the marketplace, it's going to be more of a sales type of KPI, I would assume.
Thank you.
Yeah, these are great questions. You guys are awesome. Eric, did you write these, or we really have just the smartest audience ever? This is awesome.
Definitely the smartest audience. These Excellent. Are great questions. Another one here as well. 2 years ago, a business partner and I purchased a company in the AV integration industry. It's been around for over 30 years. It's a successful company, but we need ways to better analyze the way finances have been historically tracked and see if any real changes need to be made. What suggestions would you have for that?
Yeah, that's good. And I'm sorry, the beginning of that, was it AV, like audio visual?
Yes,
Okay.
AV.
Yeah, so it sounds like there might have been a change in technology over time, and particularly over 30 years, I wouldn't be surprised. That makes sense to me. And so the financials probably did change. So two things we do, and we have a couple of clients that are sort of in that lane. So I'll just kind of talk to you what we did. Some of it was they were able to still have a legacy revenue stream that was coming in. They still had current clients from that, but they had to find a way to deliver that less costly because it didn't make sense to invest more in it. They needed to kind of drain more cash flow out of that existing customer base, and as possible, try to convert them to other revenue streams because they already had a great relationship. Heavy lift, really, really hard. The other thing they did was, and when we looked at it, we went to what we were talking about. We went to their industry, their specific industry. We were able to pull up comparable financials from ProfitSense and BizMiner. Those are two of the tools that we have to be able to look at, on average, what is their ratio for direct costs on their revenue, their other things that they were spending money on. And initially it seemed to look in line, but we found some like their facility costs were out of line. So if the industry average was, say, 5% of revenues they would spend on their cost of residents, their facilities, they were spending something around 12% because they had an old office lease. They had a lot of gear that they were still paying for. So they had an opportunity that their drop through, if they had the ability to renegotiate a lease, sell off some of their gear that they weren't using anymore, even at a fire sale, it just meant they didn't need to maintain it. Once they were able to relieve that monthly expense, that would turn into drop through. So that's kind of what they did because they had a legacy side. The other piece was they spent a whole lot of time talking about objectives and repivoting, because what they said was, well, what do we do really well? What are we like to do? What is, what are we good at? And what they did was they actually found, they were in the AV space, but they found out that aerial photography, drones and stuff, were something that sort of connected. It's had a communication phase, so they found that they could create another revenue stream, particularly in a vertical that they understood very well. So they did that. They tried to use, and it was the same employees, so they didn't have to go out and make more investments. The same people were able to do it. They had to learn some new tricks, right? But that was cool. It was more fun for the employees too. And they were able to have those same conversations with clients that they knew, not that they were necessarily going to buy, but because they had that trust, they'd be like, hey, we're doing something new. Who do you know in your network that we could talk to? So they were able to do that. And then that just meant they had a new revenue stream to set a new set of KPIs because they were different from the old ones. So some of that was a pivot. I don't know if that applies to them, but new set of KPIs and then trying to really milk the cash flow out of legacy revenue streams. That's what they were doing. Don't know if that applies, but kind of the way we were thinking, trying to get outside the box as much as we could. It's a great question.
Great, thank you.
And I'm looking here, Eric, I think we're over. And I don't want to,
right.
I didn't want to sell anybody short on this. What I did want to do is, this is in your slide stack as well, because these questions are great. I want to keep having these and even be more thoughtful if I can get some more details. So this is us here at Daytona State College. We love helping everybody in Volusia. This is my email address. This is our phone number. And then this is our website. It's actually part of the Daytona State College website, which is amazing. You can get to us there, and we'd love to continue these conversations. We'd love to help as many people as possible. This is really a lot of fun for us. And then also, if you're not sure who to turn to, if let's say you're calling from out of state or out of county, if you'll still reach out to us, we can then forward your information to the other versions of me, because just in our region alone, there's 39 professionals. So it's not just me, there's a whole lot of us. We can send you to the right people so you can get those questions answered and keep these conversations going, because they're really good. So,
certainly.
Yeah, I'd like to maybe just shut it off so somebody will watch the recording that isn't over an hour. But I thank you very much. It was really a lot of fun for me. I hope you got something out of it. And please let us know whatever way that the SBDC can be helping your small business.
Certainly. Thank you, Tom. And thank you, everyone, for attending. I just wanted to note, as he said, we've had a lot of great questions, and there's multiple we haven't been able to get to, but many are very detailed. So we're going to download all the questions, and then me and Tom will figure out how to best follow up with those people. And we want to make sure that your questions do get answered. So look out for that. But thank you again for attending. We'll officially conclude the webinar.